Hi, and welcome back to Lisa's Stamp Studio. I'm going to be teaching you an interactive slider card today using the adorable Spirited Snowman stamp set from the holiday catalog. Take a look at that. Isn't it cute how he skates across the card? Quite simple to put together, and I'll walk you through it step by step. You'll be able to find a link down in the description of this video below that will navigate you to the pictures, cutting dimensions, and the supplies that I've used. Let's head over to the stamp table and let's get started on today's project. Here's a close-up of the card we're going to be creating today. Isn't this cute? So you can see that that little snowman's going to skate right across the front of the card for that slide out. This adorable slider card idea came from my team member, Meagan Justus. I'm going to link you to her video down below. She actually did her card in the portrait mode, so you'll be able to see two different samples. We're going to be using the Stampin' Up! Paper trimmer. The light blade is for scoring and the dark blade is for cutting, making this really easy to use, especially for this project since we're going to be needing both of those. So I'm just going to navigate those up and out of the way for right. And I've cut a piece of Blackberry Bliss cardstock and we're going to do some scoring. The first score is going to be at 1/2 inch and we're going to score to the right of the cutting arm. So I'm going to line it up here at the 1/2 inch mark, which is here, and with the light blade I am going to score. Now I'm going to slide this over so that this end is at the 4 inch mark. I'm going to close the arm, and then again with my blade I'm going to score. And that's all we're going to do for right now. I've cut a piece of designer series paper. This is from the Country Lane Suite. It's not really expected for a Christmas card, but the patterns in there are beautiful and they can be used all year round. I'm going to use the Blackberry Bliss ink pad, and I'm going to add some snowflakes to this designer series paper. I'm going to be using the Spirited Snowman stamp set. Isn't this cute? You're going to be able to find this in the Stampin' Up! Holiday catalog. If you don't already have a demonstrator and you're interested in purchasing Stampin' Up! Supplies, I would be more than happy to send you a complimentary copy of the holiday catalog and or the annual catalog. Just leave me a comment below. I've mounted the snowflakes and I'll go ahead and ink those up in the Blackberry Bliss ink. And I'm going to create a little bit of a movement on this card by just alternating the pattern. So I'm just going to turn my paper to make it a little bit easier for me rather than turn my hand. And I'm just going to go up and down. This is that card base we already scored. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fold up on those score lines. I'm going to use my bone folder to get those nice crisp edges on here. And I'm doing this simply so that I'm aware of where the front and the back of my card is. I prefer to have the seam of my card to the back so that it's less noticeable. So I know this is going to be the front of my card. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to adhere the designer series paper. I'm going to be very generous with the adhesive, leaving long strips of adhesive all the way around the perimeter since we are going to be doing some cutting through both layers. Again, knowing that my tab is down, this is going to be the front of my card, I'm going to go ahead and adhere this to the front. I'm going to look to leave a small border all the way around. My next step is to use the 1 inch circle punch, and I'm going to create a small notch on this end to help pull out our slider. Using the punch upside down will help you to navigate, and you only want to go in about halfway. So I'm just looking on both sides to see if there's about equal space, and we'll punch that out. I'm going to bring the paper trimmer back in. I've moved the cutting blade out of the way for right now. And with that 1/2 inch score line, we're going to make sure that's on the left. I'm going to line it up at 1 3/4. In Megan's video, which I'm linking below, she actually lined up at 1 1/2. And it just depends on how much depth you need for the image you're going to use. So I just adjusted those measurements slightly for my snowman. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my blade up. And I am going to align it here at the 1 inch mark, and we are going to slide down to the 4 1/2 inch mark. So let me just leave the arm slightly open. I'm going to bring that blade down to the 1 inch mark, and there's a little pointer here making it easy to see. I'm going to lay that down on top of my cardstock, making sure my paper is aligned as straight as possible, and I'm going to slide down to 4 1/2. Now, because I know I'm going through 2 layers, the designer paper and the cardstock, I'm going to go back up to the 1 inch mark to make sure that I've cut through both. If you decide to make this card and you're going to use an embossed layer here, make sure you adhere it first because I find that it cuts through the layers much neater if they're together. I have a small piece of Whisper White cardstock here, and I'm going to put a dimensional on one end. This is actually going to create the slider, this little tab. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my card and I am going to slide this up through the slit. And I'm going to leave that dimensional exposed, and I want to make sure that this is all the way over to the end where I have cut it. And then I'm going to flip it over. And on the back side, I'm going to use tear and tape. I found that this holds up a lot better with repeated sliding than regular adhesive. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add 2 strips here just to make sure that it stays good and stuck. Make sure that you burnish that paper down inside, and then I like to use my Take Your Pick pickup tool with the paper piercing end to help me remove that paper backing. I keep my fingernails short and I find this really troublesome for me to get off, so this just kind of helps me get it started. Then I'm just going to make sure that this is all the way down to the bottom of my slit, lining it up the best I can. Separate piece of cardstock here for the insert. Again, all the measurements are in the link of this video below. And I'm going to line that up. I want to make sure that the top is going to be near the opening and that I'm going to be covering that tab that we've placed down here at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll press that in place. Now I'm going to flip it over and just give you an idea of how this works. But you see, this is the mechanics. Now all we have to do is go ahead and seal up this 1/2-inch strip. That's going to create that closure. And again, I'm going to use tear and tape on my card because I know it's going to be open and closed quite a bit. I'm going to fold this end up. It's really sticky and I just want to make sure that everything is aligned, and then all I have to do is just simply close it, and that'll create that closure. So here we are to the front of the card. The next step for me is to use a pencil. You can eyeball this. I'm going to put a small dot where I'm going to want to put a hole for the ribbon to help create the slide out. And then I'm going to pull this out, and I'm using the 1/8 inch hole punch, and I'm going to punch that hole out. Now while I have that open, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit more stamping. I'm going back to the Blackberry Bliss ink and I'm going back to those snowflakes. I'm going to stamp a few of those here inside just to give a little bit of a pattern to this card. I'm going to use the Memento ink now to stamp the greeting just because I want a little variation in the color. So I'm going to go ahead and ink up the words Winter Cheer, and I'm going to stamp those here in the center. Now I have a confession to make. I realized after I created this card that I had pulled out a ribbon that is retired. So I thought, well, how can I get that color? How can I get something that's going to match what I'm doing? So I actually colored my own using the Stampin' Blends. I took the Classic Weave white ribbon, and that's the Dark Mango Melody Stampin' Blends, and I colored it. And the reason I chose that color is because when I stamped my little snowman on thick Whisper White cardstock, I used the Mango Melody Stampin' Blends and the Blackberry Bliss Stampin' Blends to help coordinate with this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to slide this down a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and thread this through the hole. I did have to use my Stampin' Blends on both sides because the color was a little bit lighter. This ribbon is very absorbent. I also cut a piece of Blackberry Bliss Baker's Twine. This comes from a trio package. And I'm going to tie that around here at the base. And of course, there's lots of things you can use here at the bottom. I just opted for this one. Now I'll go ahead and tie this in a knot. And I'm tying it fairly close to the end. And I'll use my paper snips to give that a little bit of a trim. And then I'm going to trim up the end of my ribbon. I didn't color all the way to the end just so I could have a spot for my fingers. And that little tab right here, that's for that snowman. I opted not to color him in today's video because I use the Stampin' Blends an awful lot, and I've got an entire series teaching you how to use them. I'll make sure I provide the link for that also below so that you can see how I did this. But I'm going to go ahead and take off that paper backing on my dimensional. That's going to reveal the other sticky side, and I'm going to mount my snowman. The only thing that I'm careful about is I want to make sure that his skate right here at the bottom is going to stay within the circumference of my card so I can get him in and out of the envelope. And then there you go. We've got our Christmas slider. Isn't this absolutely adorable? Here's the card we created today with the ribbon that I colored with the Stampin' Blends. And here's the card I created before you joined me. You're going to notice that these snowflakes are darker. On this one, I actually stamped off a layer of ink on my scratch paper to make them lighter on here. Which one do you like better? Do you like the darker snowflakes or the lighter snowflakes? Thank you so much for joining me, everyone. I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.